The conference room smelled like recycled air and alien sweat. Admiral Toth of the Valrine species sat at the head of the long metal table, his four eyes blinking in sequence as he reviewed the data pad in his clawed hands. Around him, military leaders from 6 different alien species waited in respectful silence. They had called this meeting to discuss Earth's contribution to the Galactic Coalition military forces. 3 months had passed since humanity joined the coalition. 3 months of paperwork, negotiations, and careful diplomacy. Now came the practical matter of integrating human soldiers into the war effort against the Dominion Swarm. The Swarm had been pushing into coalition territory for 2 years, taking system after system. They needed warriors. They needed discipline. They needed help. The humans have submitted their military roster, Admiral Toth announced, his voice a deep rumble that translator devices rendered into multiple languages simultaneously. They offer 2,000 soldiers for the defense of Refugee 7 and surrounding territories. A Kryn general named Vorn leaned forward, her scaled face showing approval. 2,000 is generous for a new member species. What are their qualifications? Toth scrolled through the files. According to their records, all volunteers have completed advanced combat training. Many have experience in what humans call special operations. Their psychological evaluations are attached. Dr. Sten, the Coalition's chief psychologist, reached for his own datapad. His species, also Valrine, prided themselves on understanding the warrior mind. He had spent years studying the mental patterns of successful soldiers from dozens of worlds. He opened the human files and began reading. His face changed color, shifting from deep purple to pale lavender. Admiral, I believe there has been an error in the file transfer. What kind of error? These psychological profiles cannot be correct. Every single human soldier shows markers for extreme risk-taking behavior, diminished threat assessment, and inappropriate emotional responses to danger. Dr. Sten looked up from his pad, his eyes wide. By coalition standards, not one of these individuals should be allowed near a weapon, let alone sent into combat. Murmurs spread around the table. General Vorn frowned. Perhaps their testing methods differ from ours. Before anyone could respond, the door slid open. A human woman in a crisp military uniform walked in, followed by 5 soldiers in mismatched armor. The woman had dark skin and short black hair. She saluted, though the gesture looked casual compared to the rigid formality of coalition protocols. Captain Rita Owens, Human Liaison Officer, reporting as requested. I brought some of our first deployment team so you could meet them. Admiral Toth gestured to empty seats. Please sit. We were just reviewing your personnel files. The human soldiers sat down, but none of them sat still. One man wearing a patch that read Lieutenant Roy Briggs spun a small knife between his fingers. A woman with red hair tied back in a ponytail kept tapping her boot against the floor in rhythm. Another soldier, a young man with an easy smile, seemed more interested in the alien technology around the room than the meeting itself. Dr. Sten could not help himself. Lieutenant Briggs, your file indicates you have survived 47 near-death experiences. 47, that is not normal. Roy stopped spinning his knife and grinned. Doc, I prefer to think of them as learning opportunities. Besides, I'm still here, aren't I? That is precisely my concern. Your survival appears to be despite your decision-making, not because of it. The red-haired woman, whose name tag identified her as Corporal Lena Hayes, laughed. He's not wrong, Roy. Remember that time on Mars when you tried to jump the canyon on a hoverbike? I made it across. Your bike didn't. Admiral Toth held up a hand for silence. Captain Owens, I must be direct. These psychological profiles are deeply concerning. Is there truly no mistake? Rita Owens shook her head. No mistake, Admiral. Those are our soldiers. But surely you screen out unstable individuals. Surely you select for discipline, caution, respect for chain of command. We do screen, Owens said carefully. Just not the way you might expect. General Vorn leaned forward again. Explain. Captain Owens took a breath. Earth has billions of people. When we put out a call for military volunteers, we get millions of applications. We can't use everyone, so we select for specific traits. We need people who volunteer for dangerous work. People who stay calm under pressure. People who can make quick decisions. People who, when faced with a deadly situation, don't freeze up. That is reasonable, Admiral Toth said. But these files suggest your soldiers actively seek danger. They laugh at mortality. This one, he pointed at a file, lists his hobby as free climbing. without safety equipment, on sheer cliff faces, for fun. The young man with the easy smile raised his hand. That's me, sir. Private Nate Cross, it's really peaceful up there. Dr. Sten made a strangled sound. Peaceful. You are one slip away from death. Yeah, but I don't slip. Nate's smile never wavered. That's kind of the whole point. Another soldier spoke up. She had been quiet until now, studying the aliens with dark, calm eyes. Her name tag read Corporal Amy Park. She said, I think there might be a cultural misunderstanding here. Where do you all get your warriors from? We have warrior castes, General Vorn said with pride. Individuals born and bred for combat, raised from childhood with discipline and honor. Right, you breed for it. Amy nodded. We don't really do that. We just put out an ad and see who shows up. And who shows up? Dr. Sten asked, though he sounded like he dreaded the answer. Roy Briggs stopped spinning his knife again. People like us. People who get bored with safe jobs. People who want to do something that matters, even if it's dangerous. Especially if it's dangerous. Why? Admiral Toth genuinely wanted to understand. Why would anyone choose danger? The room fell silent for a moment. Then Lena Hayes spoke quietly. Because someone has to. Because there's a war happening and people need help. Because sitting at home while others fight feels worse than the fear. Her words hung in the air. The alien officers looked at each other, uncertain. These humans were nothing like they expected. There was no warrior pride, no ritual honor, no disciplined formation. Just a group of individuals who seemed more interested in action than ceremony. Captain Owen stood. Admirals, generals, with respect, I know our methods seem strange, but we didn't send you broken soldiers. We sent you the ones who volunteer to run toward explosions while everyone else runs away. Maybe that looks crazy to you. Maybe it is crazy, but it's also effective. Admiral Toth closed his eyes, thinking. The Dominion swarm was winning the war. The Coalition needed help desperately. Could they really afford to turn away 2,000 volunteers just because they didn't fit the psychological profile? Very well, he said finally. We will give you a trial assignment. There is a forward base on the moon orbiting Refuge 7. Dangerous position, high casualty rate. If your soldiers can hold it for 1 week, we will discuss further deployment. Roy Briggs grinned again, wider this time. When do we leave? Tomorrow morning. Perfect. That gives us time to check out the local food. I heard Station 7 has excellent noodles. Roy stood up and the other human soldiers followed his lead. They filed out of the conference room, chatting and joking with each other. After they left, Dr. Sten looked at Admiral Toth. You are sending them to Delta 9 outpost. That position has fallen 3 times in the last month. The Dominion attacks it weekly. Those humans will be dead within days. I know, Admiral Toth said quietly. But if they somehow survive, we will know that their madness has method to it. General Vorn added. And if they fail, at least they chose this fate themselves. None of them slept well that night. Dust covered everything at Forward Operating Base Delta 9. Red dust from the moon's iron-rich surface coated the defensive walls, the weapons emplacements, and the armor of every soldier who had been stationed there for more than an hour. The base sat in a crater, which provided some natural protection but also made it a perfect target. 3 times in the last month, Dominion forces had overrun this position. 3 times, Coalition Command had rebuilt it. The location was too strategic to abandon. Lieutenant Roy Briggs stood on the outer wall looking through binoculars at the horizon. Beside him, a Kryn soldier named Officer Thel kept checking his weapon for the 5th time in as many minutes. Thel had survived the last attack on Delta 9, and had volunteered to stay on and help train the new human defenders. He was beginning to regret that decision. You should take cover, Thel said, his scales rippling with anxiety. Dominion scouts have been spotted. They always scout before an attack, Roy lowered his binoculars. How long between scouting and attacking? Usually 6 hours, enough time to bring in heavy armor and troop carriers. 6 hours? Roy turned and shouted down to the courtyard below. Hey, Nate! We've got 6 hours before things get interesting. Private Nate Cross looked up from where he was unpacking crates of explosives. Want me to set up the fireworks early or wait for guests? Wait for guests. No point wasting the good stuff. Thel stared at them. You call high explosives fireworks? I mean, they do light up the sky, Roy said reasonably. What else would you call them? Before Thel could answer, Corporal Lena Hayes climbed up to join them on the wall. She carried her sniper rifle, already assembled and cleaned. She found a position with a good view of the approaches and began setting up. That position is too exposed, Thel protested. Dominion heavy weapons will target elevated shooters first. Lena shrugged without looking up from her scope adjustments. Then I better shoot them before they shoot me. That is not how defensive tactics work. It's how my tactics work. She finally looked at him, her expression calm. I've reviewed the last 3 battles here. Your people took cover, fought from protected positions, and still lost. So maybe protected positions aren't as safe as you think. Thel wanted to argue but could not find the words. She was right. They had lost, every time. Over the next 6 hours, the human soldiers prepared in ways that made no sense to the coalition defenders. Instead of reinforcing cover positions, Roy's squad spent time painting bright yellow stripes on their armor. When asked why, Private Omar Diaz explained it made them easier to see. Why would you want the enemy to see you? A Valrine soldier asked, confused. Because if they're shooting at me, they're not shooting at someone else, Omar said, checking his heavy plasma cannon. Besides, I've got shields, probably. Probably? The indicator light is broken, so I'm not sure. But it worked yesterday. Another human, Corporal Amy Park, set up a medical station right in the middle of the courtyard, instead of in the protected bunker. She arranged her surgical tools with care, humming a tune that her translator labeled as Ancient Human War Song, but sounded oddly cheerful. The medical station should be underground, Thel insisted, following her around. You will be exposed to enemy fire. Amy looked at him with patient eyes. If it's underground, I can't see who needs help. If I can't see them, I can't save them. Simple math. It is not math, it is suicide. Maybe. But I didn't come here to hide in a bunker. She smiled at him, and somehow that made it worse. She was not being brave or defiant. She genuinely did not seem worried about the danger. When the Dominion swarm finally appeared on the horizon, they came in force, hundreds of armored soldiers, dozens of heavy tanks and aerial support that filled the sky. Through his command link, Thel heard coalition fleet officers wishing them luck and promising to remember their sacrifice. It was the same thing they had said to the last 3 garrisons. All defensive positions, prepare for engagement. Admiral Toth's voice came through the communication system. Hold as long as possible. Reinforcements are 6 hours away. Roy Briggs picked up his own communicator. Understood, Admiral. We'll keep busy until then. Lieutenant Briggs, please follow defensive protocols. Do not take unnecessary risks. Define unnecessary. The communication link went silent for a moment. Then Admiral Toth said very carefully, Lieutenant, the coalition cannot afford to lose. Contact. Lena's voice rang out from her position. Multiple targets ranged 2,000 meters in closing. The Dominion swarm opened fire. Energy weapons lit up the dusty air. Explosions walked across the ground toward the base. Coalition soldiers took their positions behind reinforced barriers and began returning fire in controlled bursts. Just as their training dictated, the human soldiers did something different. Nate, you ready? Roy shouted. Born ready! Nate had climbed onto the roof of the main bunker, carrying what looked like way too many explosives. What is he doing? Thel screamed over the noise of battle. Probably something stupid, Roy admitted, but it'll be effective stupid. Nate threw the first charge. It arced over the defensive wall and landed among the advancing Dominion troops. The explosion was much larger than it should have been. Dominion soldiers scattered, their formation breaking. Nate threw another, then another, laughing the entire time. He is drawing all their fire. Thel could not believe what he was seeing. He will be killed. Maybe. Roy sounded unconcerned. But look at what he's doing. Thel looked. The Dominion forces, trained to focus on the most immediate threat, had shifted their fire to target Nate, which meant they were not targeting the defensive positions, which meant coalition soldiers could fire without taking as much return fire. Lena began picking off Dominion heavy weapon operators. Without their suppressive fire, the enemy advance slowed. Omar stepped out from cover entirely and opened up with his heavy plasma cannon, walking forward as he fired. Energy shields flickered around him, absorbing hits. When the shields failed, he just kept walking and shooting. You are supposed to retreat when your shields fail. Thel shouted at him, why? My gun still works. Omar's grin was visible even through his helmet visor. More Dominion troops poured into the crater. They should have been overwhelming the defenders through sheer numbers. But they could not advance in formation because Nate's explosives kept breaking their lines. They could not establish firing positions because Lena shot anyone who tried. They could not concentrate their forces because Omar was somehow in 3 places at once, appearing from different angles. And then Roy Briggs did something that Thel would never forget. A Dominion troop carrier, heavily armored and carrying at least 50 soldiers, rolled toward the base entrance. Roy grabbed a magnetic charge, ran down from the wall, and sprinted directly at the vehicle. "No," Thel screamed. "That is suicide." Roy ran faster. Dominion soldiers fired at him. Some shots hit, staggering him, but his armor held. He reached the carrier and slapped the magnetic charge onto its side. Then he dove underneath the vehicle, rolled out the other side, and kept running. The carrier exploded. 50 Dominion soldiers died instantly. The wreckage blocked the main approach to the base. Roy jogged back, slightly out of breath. "That worked better than expected. You could have died." "But I didn't." Roy checked his armor for damage. These suits are pretty tough." The battle continued for 3 more hours. It should have been over in 1. The Dominion swarm should have crushed the defenders easily. But they could not predict what the humans would do next because the humans did not follow any logical pattern. Every time the Dominion adapted to one tactic, the humans switched to something else. When Dominion forces tried to flank from the east, they found Amy Park had moved her medical station to that side and was shooting at them with a pistol while simultaneously bandaging a wounded Kryn soldier. When they sent aerial units, Nate somehow managed to hit them with explosives thrown by hand. When they pulled back to regroup, Lena shot their officers from impossible distances. By the time Dominion forces finally retreated, they had lost nearly half their number. Delta 9 stood intact, walls damaged but defenses holding. Coalition casualties were surprisingly light. Every alien soldier was wounded or exhausted. The humans were bleeding, limping, and in some cases actively on fire, but still moving around and asking if anyone needed help. Admiral Toth's voice came through the communicator, shocked. "Delta 9 status report?" Roy picked up the radio. His armor had scorch marks and bullet holes. "We're still here, Admiral. Enemy retreated about 5 minutes ago. I think we hurt their feelings." "How?" "The tactical analysis suggested you would be overrun within an hour." "Yeah, we saw that analysis. Decided not to follow it." "That is not how military operations work, Lieutenant." "Work today." Roy looked around at the base. Fires burned in several places. Bodies lay everywhere, most of them Dominion. "Might want to send those reinforcements anyway, though. I think they'll try again tomorrow." After the communication ended, Officer Thel sat down heavily on the dusty ground. His scales were pale with shock. Amy Park came over and began checking him for injuries despite his protests. "You are all insane," he whispered. Amy smiled at him while wrapping a bandage around his arm. "Yeah, probably. But we won, didn't we?" Thel had no answer for that. The medical frigate drifted in high orbit, far from any combat zone. Its white corridors were quiet, clean, and safe. Dr. Sten walked these corridors with a datapad clutched in his hands, reviewing notes that made less sense the more he read them. Behind him, Dr. Hannah Wilson followed, trying to keep up with his rapid pace. She was human, assigned as a liaison to help the Coalition understand her species better. So far, she had been mostly unsuccessful. "This cannot be normal," Dr. Sten said, not for the first time. "No species survives by ignoring danger." "We don't exactly ignore it," Hannah said carefully. "We just have a different relationship with risk." Dr. Sten stopped walking and turned to face her. His 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of deep confusion in his species. "I have conducted psychological evaluations on warriors from 17 different species over my career. I understand the warrior mind. I understand courage, discipline, even controlled aggression. What I do not understand is why your soldiers laugh when they should be terrified." They had reached the evaluation room. Inside, Private Nate Cross sat in a chair, looking relaxed and slightly bored. He waved when they entered. "Hey, Doc, ready for the brain scan?" Dr. Sten sat down across from him, setting his datapad on the table between them. "This is not a brain scan, Private Cross. This is a psychological evaluation to determine your fitness for continued combat duty." Cool. So like a brain scan, but with more questions. Dr. Sten decided to ignore that. He pulled up his notes. "During the battle at Delta 9, you exposed yourself to enemy fire repeatedly. You climbed onto elevated positions with no cover. You threw explosives from ranges where you could have been caught in the blast radius yourself. Explain your decision-making process." Nate thought about it. Well, somebody had to mess up their formation, right? If they all stayed grouped up, they would have rolled right over us, so I made them scatter. By nearly getting yourself killed, I mean I had armor. Pretty good armor, too. Took like 15 hits before the shields went down. And after the shields failed, you continued fighting. The armor still worked. Most of it. Nate seemed genuinely confused by the question. Why would I stop? Dr. Sten made notes.
How did you feel during the battle?
Fear, anxiety. Oh yeah, definitely scared. That's normal, though. Finally, something that made sense. So you acknowledge the fear. Good. And how do you manage this fear? Nate scratched his head. Manage it? I don't know if I manage it. It's just there. But the job still needs doing, so I do the job. Even though you are afraid? Especially because I'm afraid. If I wasn't afraid, that would mean I didn't understand how dangerous it was. Being afraid means I'm paying attention. Nate leaned forward. Look, Doc, I'm not brave because I don't feel fear. I just don't let the fear make my decisions for me. There's a difference. Dr. Sten wrote more notes, his hand moving rapidly. After dismissing Nate, he called in Corporal Lena Hayes. She entered silently and sat with perfect posture, her dark eyes calm and steady. Corporal Hayes, you positioned yourself in an exposed location during the battle. Yes. You were targeted by enemy fire multiple times. Yes. You could have chosen a safer position with only slightly reduced visibility. I could have. I chose not to. Lena's voice was even without emotion. The elevated position gave me clear sight lines. I eliminated 17 high-value targets. From a safer position, I would have eliminated perhaps 8 or 9. Which choice saves more coalition lives? Dr. Sten paused. You calculate odds during combat? Before combat, during combat, after combat. Always calculating. She smiled slightly. You think I'm reckless? I'm not. I'm very careful about which risks are worth taking. And your own life? How do you calculate its worth? Same as anyone else's, one life. But if I can trade my risk for multiple lives saved, the math works. She tilted her head. Do you not do this math in your military? Dr. Sten had no answer for that. He dismissed her and called for Private Omar Diaz. The big man filled the doorway when he entered, his heavy armor scarred from battle. Private Diaz, why do you volunteer for heavy weapons duty? It requires you to carry more weight, making you slower and more visible to enemies. Omar sat down, the chair creaking under him. Because someone has to carry the big gun. And I'm good at it. But you understand it increases your personal danger. Sure, but here's the thing, Doc. Back on Earth, I was a firefighter. You know what firefighters do? We run into burning buildings while everyone else runs out. Because someone has to. Because if we don't, people die. Omar leaned back. This is the same job, just bigger buildings and different fire. But firefighting is about saving lives. Combat is about taking lives. Combat is about protecting lives by stopping the people who want to take lives. Still saving people, just with extra steps. Dr. Sten felt a headache forming behind his eyes. He dismissed Omar and sat alone in the room for several minutes, trying to organize his thoughts. Dr. Wilson entered quietly and sat beside him. They are not making sense, he said finally. They acknowledge fear but act anyway. They calculate risk but take actions that increase danger. They seem intelligent but make choices that suggest otherwise. Maybe they make perfect sense and we're asking the wrong questions, Hannah suggested. Then what are the right questions? Before she could answer, the door opened again. This time Captain Rita Owens entered, followed by Admiral Toth and General Vorn. They had come for the final evaluation results. Dr. Sten, Admiral Toth said formally, what is your professional assessment of the human soldiers? Dr. Sten looked at his notes. Pages and pages of observations, test results, interview transcripts, all pointing to the same impossible conclusion. By every metric we use to evaluate warrior psychology, these humans should not be allowed in combat. They show consistently elevated risk-taking behaviors. They demonstrate inappropriate emotional responses to danger. They make tactical decisions that prioritize action over survival. He paused. And yet they won a battle that we calculated they could not win. They held a position that has fallen 3 times previously. They did this while suffering fewer casualties than previous defenders. General Vorn clicked her claws on the table. Then what is your recommendation? I do not know, Dr. Sten admitted. My professional opinion says they are unfit. The battle results say they are extremely effective. These 2 facts should not both be true, yet they are. Captain Owens spoke up. Maybe your evaluation system is designed for species that are not human. Maybe what looks like dysfunction in your framework is actually function in ours. Explain, Admiral Toth commanded. Rita Owen stood and walked to the front of the room. Your species breed or select warriors from childhood. You create individuals who are naturally calm, naturally disciplined, naturally suited for combat. That's efficient. But humans don't work that way. We have billions of people with billions of different personalities, and most of them are not suited for warfare. But some are. Some people have neurological wiring that makes them seek out challenges. Some have psychological frameworks that let them act despite fear. Some have value systems that prioritize protecting others above protecting themselves. She pulled up a screen showing genetic and psychological data. We don't breed these people. We don't train them from childhood. We just identify them when they volunteer, and then channel those existing traits toward military objectives. You look at someone like Private Cross and see dysfunction. We see someone whose natural inclinations make him effective in specific combat scenarios. But this is so inefficient, Dr. Steen protested. You are taking random individuals with random traits and hoping they work together? Not random, selected. There's a difference. And yes, it's messier than your system, but it's also more adaptable. Rita pulled up battle footage from Delta 9. Your bred warriors are excellent at following doctrine, but when doctrine fails, they don't know what to do. Our volunteers are used to improvising because their whole lives have been about not fitting into normal categories. That chaos, that unpredictability becomes a tactical advantage. General Vorn watched the footage carefully. The Dominion could not predict their actions. Exactly. Because they were not following standard patterns. They were making it up as they went along, using their natural instincts combined with their training. Rita turned off the screen. Are they crazy by your standards? Yes. Are they effective? Also yes. Both things can be true. Admiral Toth stood slowly. Dr. Sten, I am not asking for your professional opinion anymore. I am asking for your practical assessment. If we continue to deploy these humans in combat, will they win battles? Dr. Sten looked at his notes again. At the impossible data, at the undeniable results. Yes, he said finally. They will win. I do not understand how or why, but they will win. Then they stay. Admiral Toth's decision was final. Dr. Sten, I want you to continue studying them. But not to fix them. To understand them. If we can learn even a fraction of what makes them effective, it could change how we fight this war. After the meeting ended, Dr. Sten sat alone with Dr. Wilson again. He looked exhausted. How do you humans live with this? He asked quietly. How do you send your people into danger knowing they are afraid but will go anyway? Hannah Wilson was quiet for a long moment. Because they choose it. We don't force anyone to fight. Every single soldier volunteered. They looked at the danger and said yes anyway. That choice, that willingness, that is what makes them human soldiers. Not the craziness. The courage to be afraid and act anyway. But why would anyone choose this? Because someone has to. And because we believe some things are worth being afraid for. Dr. Sten saved his notes and closed his datapad. He did not understand humans. But perhaps he thought that was the point. Perhaps being unpredictable was their greatest weapon. Rain hammered against the transport ship's hull as it cut through the atmosphere of a nameless moon, 3 jump points behind enemy lines. Inside the cramped troop compartment, 12 soldiers checked their equipment in the dim red light. 8 were human. 4 were coalition volunteers who had specifically requested to work with the human units. Among them sat Lieutenant Roy Briggs, reviewing a holographic map that showed their impossible mission. Commander Ryan Torres stood at the front of the compartment. He was older than most soldiers, with gray streaking through his dark hair and scars crossing his face. Other humans found him intense. Aliens found him terrifying. He spoke in a quiet voice that somehow cut through the noise of the engines. Our target is a Dominion staging area. 3 shield generators protect it. Each generator is powered independently and guarded by at least 50 soldiers. Intelligence says the shields must go down simultaneously for our fleet to attack. If even one generator stays active, the Dominion can reinforce and we lose our advantage. He zoomed in on the map. We have 48 hours from insertion to shield destruction. After that, orbital bombardment begins whether we are extracted or not. The success probability is 12%. Are there any questions? Private Nate Cross raised his hand. Does that 12% assume we follow the plan or make up our own? The plan? Then I'd say our odds are better than 12%. Several humans laughed. The coalition soldiers looked uncertain whether this was humor or insanity. Torres did not smile. Private overconfidence kills more soldiers than enemy fire. Good thing I'm not overconfident then. I'm just regular confident. Nate grinned. Besides, Commander, when has any mission ever gone according to plan? Torres stared at him for a moment, then nodded. Valid point. Which is why our backup plan is to improvise. The transport shuddered suddenly. Alarms screamed. The pilot's voice crackled over the intercom. Brace for impact. Dominion anti-air got us. We're going down. The compartment erupted into chaos as soldiers grabbed for handholds. The transport spun, metal groaning. Through the small windows, Roy could see trees rushing up to meet them. The impact threw him against his restraints hard enough to bruise. Metal screeched. Something exploded, then everything went still. Roy unbuckled and fell to what was now the floor but had been the wall. Around him, soldiers were doing the same. He did a quick head count. Everyone was alive, though several were bleeding. Sound off, Torres commanded. One by one, soldiers confirmed they were functional. The transport was not. Fire burned in the engine compartment and the whole front section had crumpled. Outside, alien trees surrounded them, their purple leaves dripping with rain. Torres pulled up his portable map display. We crashed 40 kilometers from the target. Equipment check. What do we have? The news was bad. Half their explosives were destroyed in the crash. Their long-range communicator was dead. One of the coalition soldiers had a broken leg. They had no way to call for extraction, and no way to tell command they were still alive. Corporal Lena Hayes examined their position through a gap in the hull. We've got company. Dominion patrol. Looks like 6 soldiers about 200 meters out. They're heading this way to investigate the crash. Torres made a decision. We can't stay here. Grab what works, leave what doesn't, move in 3 minutes. What about the mission? One of the coalition soldiers asked. A Valrine named Officer Dren, still on. We just have to walk farther. Torres looked at each of them. Anyone who wants to surrender, speak now. I won't think less of you. This mission just went from unlikely to almost impossible. Nobody spoke. Even Officer Dren, with his broken leg splinted by Amy Park, shook his head. Then let's move. They abandoned the transport and melted into the alien jungle. Behind them, the Dominion patrol reached the crash site. Roy watched from behind a massive tree trunk as the enemy soldiers examined the wreckage. He could hear them communicating in their clicking language, which his translator converted to text on his helmet display. Transport destroyed. No bodies. Survivors escaped. Track them. Broodmother Shen wants prisoners. Great, Roy thought. They were being hunted now. The next 2 days blurred into a nightmare of constant movement. The jungle was hot and wet, filled with insects that bit through armor seals and plants that left acidic burns on exposed skin. They could not rest for more than an hour at a time because Dominion patrols kept closing in. Whatever tracking technology the enemy had, it was effective. On the second day, Lieutenant Kai Chen, their infiltration specialist, came up with an idea. I can get closer to their patrols. Maybe steal a uniform and equipment. That's insane, Officer Dren said. Their armor is biologically locked. It won't work for you. Won't know until I try. Before anyone could stop him, Kai slipped away into the jungle. 2 hours later, he returned wearing Dominion armor, its previous owner presumably dead somewhere in the undergrowth. The armor did not fit perfectly and leaked some kind of fluid, but it worked well enough. The tracker is in their helmets, Kai reported. They're following our heat signatures. We can't hide from them. Then we don't hide. Roy looked at the map. We lead them where we want them to go. They changed tactics. Instead of avoiding patrols, they deliberately attracted them, then ambushed them. It was risky and exhausting, but it gave them supplies and, more importantly, information. From captured equipment, they learned the Dominion knew about the mission. They were specifically hunting the sabotage team. They're scared, Amy observed, examining a Dominion communicator. These messages are worried. They're pulling troops from other areas to search for us. Torres smiled grimly. Then we're already disrupting their operations. Good. By the time they reached the first shield generator, they had lost most of their original equipment but gained experience with enemy weapons. They had also lost the element of surprise. The generator complex was heavily guarded with patrols every 20 minutes and automated defenses covering all approaches. Nate studied it through his scope. I don't have enough explosives to take that down. The crash destroyed most of my gear. Then we improvise. Roy pointed to the generator itself. These things produce massive amounts of energy. What if we overload it instead of blowing it up? That could work. But someone would need to get inside the control room and manually override the safety systems. Everyone looked at Kai in his stolen Dominion armor. I hate this plan already, Kai said.
When do we start?
The infiltration took 6 hours. Kai walked directly into the complex pretending to be a Dominion soldier. Every time someone challenged him, Roy's team created a distraction elsewhere. An explosion here, sniper fire there, just enough to keep the defenders busy and confused. Finally, Kai reached the control room. Through his helmet camera, they watched him work. The Dominion control systems were designed to prevent exactly what he was trying to do, but they were designed to prevent it from outside attacks. Nobody had planned for someone being inside and actively trying to make the generator explode. I'm locked out of the main system, Kai reported. Need another approach. Can you access the fuel lines? Torres asked. Maybe. Why? Because if the generator can't explode, maybe we can make the fuel explode instead. Kai disappeared from the camera view. Minutes stretched into an eternity. Dominion soldiers passed within meters of Roy's hiding position. His hand cramped around his rifle. Then Kai's voice crackled through the radio. Fuel lines redirected. When this thing goes, it's going to go big. Get out of there. Working on it. The explosion, when it came, was indeed big. The entire generator complex turned into a fireball that lit up the jungle for kilometers. Roy's team ran, branches whipping at their faces as the shockwave chased them. Behind them, secondary explosions continued as fuel reserves ignited. They regrouped 2 kilometers away, taking shelter in a rocky outcrop. Everyone was there except Kai. They waited, hoping to see him emerge from the burning jungle. Minutes passed. Then, impossibly, Kai stumbled into view. His stolen armor melted and blackened, but alive. That was fun, he gasped, collapsing. Let's never do it again. Amy immediately started treating his burns. Torres checked his map. 1 generator down, 2 to go. And now they know exactly where we are. How long until the fleet attacks? Roy asked. 36 hours. They had to destroy 2 more generators in a day and a half, with the entire Dominion military hunting them. Officer Dren, his broken leg now infected despite Amy's treatment, spoke up. This mission was rated 12% success. After everything that has gone wrong, what do you estimate our chances are now? Roy thought about it. Honestly, maybe 3%. So we should surrender. Absolutely not. Roy checked his rifle. We're already here. Might as well finish the job. The coalition soldiers looked at each other in disbelief. But the humans were already moving, planning their approach to the second generator. And somehow, despite everything, Officer Dren found himself following them deeper into enemy territory. 6 months after first contact, the Dominion swarm held an emergency council aboard their command ship Infinite Hunger. Broodmother Shen, eldest of the Dominion leadership, watched battle reports with growing concern. In her 300 years of life, she had conquered 42 systems. She had never known defeat. Until now, the holographic display showed losses across 12 sectors. Not catastrophic losses, not even strategically significant losses, but losses where there should have been easy victories. And in each case, the same note appeared in the tactical reports. Human forces present. Show me the recordings again, she commanded. Her subordinates obeyed, though they had shown her the same footage dozens of times already. The recordings came from surviving Dominion soldiers, their helmet cameras capturing their final moments. What Shen saw made no tactical sense. In one recording, a Dominion battalion surrounded a coalition outpost. 300 trained soldiers against 60 defenders. Victory should have been certain. But when the attack began, 6 human soldiers charged out of the outpost directly at the Dominion lines. Not a defensive counterattack. Not a strategic maneuver. Just 6 individuals running at 300 enemies while screaming and firing weapons. The Dominion forces, expecting a desperate last stand, instead faced soldiers who seemed eager to die. Except they did not die. They scattered the formation, created chaos, and somehow survived long enough for coalition reinforcements to arrive. The recording ended with the camera operator fleeing in panic. Another recording showed a space battle. A human ship, badly damaged and venting atmosphere rammed itself into a Dominion carrier. The carrier survived, but its engines were destroyed. The Coalition fleet capitalized on this, destroying 3 more Dominion ships before they could assist. The recording captured the human pilot's final transmission. Laughter. Broodmother Shen turned off the displays. They laugh when they should scream. They attack when they should flee. They sacrifice themselves, but not in calculated exchange. They do it as if death is merely inconvenient. Perhaps they are bred for this purpose, one subordinate suggested. Some species create soldier castes. No, intelligence reports say these are volunteers, random individuals from their general population who chose to fight. The council chamber fell silent. The concept horrified them. Warriors were supposed to be selected, trained, controlled. The idea that any random member of a species could be this dangerous suggested something deeply wrong with human psychology. "What are your orders, Broodmother?" a tactical officer asked. Shen made a difficult decision. Any operation where humans are detected will be reassessed. We will avoid direct engagement where possible. We will study them, learn their patterns, find their weakness. What she did not say, but everyone understood. The Dominion swarm was afraid. Meanwhile, at Coalition Forward Command, Fleet Admiral Sulan reviewed very different reports. She was Kryn species, pragmatic and calculating. The humans had been serving alongside Coalition forces for 6 months, and the results were undeniable. Territory lost was being reclaimed. Enemy forces were retreating. Morale among Coalition troops had improved. But there was also confusion. Sulan pulled up an incident report from just last week. A Coalition patrol had encountered Dominion forces 3 times their number. Standard procedure was to retreat and call for support. But the patrol included 3 human soldiers, and humans apparently did not follow standard procedures. Instead of retreating, the humans convinced the patrol leader to attack. The recording showed Private Beth Warner, the newest human recruit, standing on top of a disabled vehicle and firing at enemy positions while explosions bracketed her. Her radio transmission was captured. "This is way better than my old job at the accounting firm." The Coalition forces won that skirmish, but Admiral Sulan could not determine if it was because of sound tactics or sheer luck. Probably both. She activated her communicator. "Get me Captain Owens." Rita Owens appeared on the screen moments later, looking tired but alert. "Admiral, Captain, I need you to explain something to me. Why do your soldiers treat warfare like entertainment?" Rita smiled slightly. "They don't think it's entertainment, Admiral. They think it's meaningful. There's a difference." "Explain." "Most humans live very safe, very comfortable lives. We have food, shelter, security. But some people find that emptiness exhausting. They want to do something that matters, something larger than themselves. Military service gives them purpose." Rita paused. When Private Warner says fighting is better than accounting, she doesn't mean she enjoys the violence. She means she finally feels like her life has meaning. Admiral Sulan considered this. "And the laughter? The jokes during combat? Coping mechanism. If we took every danger completely seriously, we'd be paralyzed by fear. Humor lets us acknowledge the danger while still functioning. That seems psychologically unhealthy. Maybe, but it works." Admiral Sulan changed topics. "I am planning a major offensive across 6 fronts. I want human forces assigned to each one. Not because I need your combat effectiveness, though that helps. I need the psychological impact. Dominion forces are starting to avoid engaging when they detect human signatures. We can use that. You want to weaponize our reputation?" "Exactly. Is that a problem?" Rita thought about it. "No. But my soldiers are going to love this. They'll probably make it into a competition to see who can scare the enemy most." "Let them. Whatever works." Admiral Sulan leaned forward. "Captain, I must admit something. When you first arrived, I thought humans were a liability. Unstable, unpredictable, dangerous to yourselves as much as the enemy. I was wrong. You are all of those things, but you are also effective in ways I did not anticipate. Thank you, Admiral. I think..." After the communication ended, Rita went to find Roy Briggs and his squad. She found them in the training facility, teaching a group of young Coalition soldiers some kind of hand-to-hand combat technique that looked more like organized chaos than martial arts. "We're going on offense," Rita announced. 6 major operations across 6 fronts. You'll be split up 1 unit per operation." Roy paused mid-demonstration. "They're splitting us up? You've trained other Coalition soldiers well enough. Time to spread the chaos around. Nate Cross, who had been pretending to be a practice dummy, sat up. Do we get to pick which operation? Why would it matter? Because some are probably more dangerous than others, and I want the dangerous one. Rita sighed. Of course he did. I'll see what I can arrange. Over the next 2 weeks, human forces deployed across coalition space. Each operation had different objectives, but all had the same result. The Dominion retreated faster than expected. In some cases, Dominion forces abandoned positions before coalition troops even arrived. Broodmother Shen watched these retreats with increasing frustration. They are making us look cowardly. Our soldiers flee from inferior numbers because of reputation alone. Should we issue orders preventing retreat? A tactical officer asked. No, that would only increase casualties for no gain. Shen studied the tactical maps. The humans have a saying, captured from one of their transmissions. Discretion is the better part of valor. We must be discreet. We must find a way to counter them that does not involve direct engagement. What do you suggest? Shen highlighted a coalition supply route. The humans rely on support from their fleet. They cannot fight without ammunition, without reinforcements. We will strike at their logistics, force them to spread out, divide their forces. Then we will hit them when they are isolated and vulnerable. They have proven dangerous even when isolated, Broodmother. Then we will hit them with overwhelming numbers. 10 to 1, 20 to 1. Whatever is necessary. Shen's voice hardened. We will teach them that even void-touched warriors can die. She began planning the largest Dominion offensive in 5 years. Every reserve unit mobilized, every resource committed. The target, a coalition supply station that would require human defenders to spread thin across multiple positions. Shen did not know it yet, but this would be her greatest mistake. Because humans had a saying for that too, captured from another transmission. Go big or go home. And when humans went big, physics itself seemed to protest. Private Beth Warner sat in the mess hall of her assigned ship, eating something that was technically food but tasted like cardboard. Across from her, Corporal Amy Park reviewed medical supplies. Are you scared? Beth asked. Suddenly, Amy looked up. Of what? This offensive. Everyone says it's the biggest operation of the war, that the Dominion is going to throw everything at us. Yeah, probably. Amy went back to her supply list. That's kind of what we're here for, though. But what if we lose? What if we die? Amy was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Beth, I'm going to tell you something that Roy told me once. Being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means being scared and doing the job anyway. You feel fear? Good. That means you understand the stakes. Now let the fear sharpen your focus instead of controlling you. How do you do that? Practice, and trust in your training and your squad. Amy smiled. Plus, it helps that we're usually too busy to worry much during actual combat. Beth nodded slowly. Around them, the ship prepared for battle. Human and alien soldiers worked side by side, checking equipment and reviewing plans. The difference between them was obvious. The alien soldiers were somber, preparing for possible death. The human soldiers were energetic, preparing for action. Different species, different psychology, Beth thought. But the same mission, protect the innocent by stopping the guilty. That was worth being afraid for. That was worth fighting for, even if it meant facing the largest Dominion offensive in history with a smile and a loaded rifle. Space near Sector 887 looked empty to the naked eye, but sensors told a different story. Hundreds of ships hung in the void, divided into 2 massive fleets preparing for battle. The Dominion swarm had committed everything to this offensive. 2,000 warships, 50,000 soldiers, and enough firepower to crack a planet. Opposite them, the coalition fleet waited with half as many ships and a prayer. Admiral Toth stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the tactical display with mounting dread. Intelligence reports had warned them the Dominion was planning something big, but this exceeded worst-case projections. He opened a channel to all coalition ships. All forces, this is Admiral Toth. Today we face an enemy that outnumbers us 2 to 1. They believe this advantage guarantees victory. They are wrong. We have courage, discipline, and something they do not have. Allies who laugh at impossible odds. He paused. Human forces, are you ready? From 12 different ships, human voices responded with variations of yes, ranging from formal acknowledgement to Nate Cross shouting, "Born ready." With audible enthusiasm, Broodmother Shen watched from the Dominion flagship as her forces moved into position. This time there would be no retreating, no fear-based decisions. She had personally ordered every ship to continue fighting regardless of human presence. The commanders who objected were replaced. Victory was not optional. "Begin the assault," she commanded. The Dominion fleet surged forward. Energy weapons lit up the void. The Coalition fleet returned fire, ships maneuvering in practiced formations. It should have been a straightforward engagement. Superior numbers gradually overwhelming inferior defenses. War by mathematics. Then the humans did something unexpected. 3 human-crewed ships broke formation and accelerated directly at the Dominion lines. Not a flanking maneuver, not a tactical strike, just 3 ships charging at 2,000 like ancient cavalry. "What are they doing?" Shen demanded. "That is suicide." Her tactical officer checked the displays. "They are broadcasting on open channels. Audio only. Play it." What came through the speakers sounded like music. Loud, aggressive human music with heavy drums and screaming guitars. Over the music, human voices shouted challenges and insults in broken Dominion language, clearly read from a translation guide. The Dominion fleet's advance hesitated, just for a moment. Not from fear, from pure confusion. This was not how space battles worked. This was not how professional militaries operated. This was madness. That moment of hesitation was all the Coalition needed. The main fleet pushed forward, targeting the disorganized Dominion formation. Plasma bolts and missile salvos ripped through enemy shields. 2 Dominion destroyers exploded before they could react. The 3 human ships reached the Dominion lines and immediately stopped making sense. One ship, badly damaged and venting atmosphere, rammed itself into a Dominion carrier. The carrier's shields held, but the impact knocked it off course directly into friendly fire from its own fleet. Another human ship targeted a Dominion ammunition transport. Instead of destroying it from a distance, the human pilot flew close enough to board. Through helmet cameras, the Dominion watched as Roy Briggs and his squad cut through the transport's crew, then used the Dominion's own ammunition against surrounding ships. "They are insane," Shen whispered. "Completely insane. Orders, Broodmother?" She could not think of orders that made sense. How did you fight an enemy that did not follow logical patterns? How did you counter tactics that should not work but somehow did? On the Coalition flagship, Admiral Toth watched the battle with something between horror and admiration. The human ships were taking catastrophic damage, but they were creating massive disruption. Dominion formations kept breaking apart to deal with human units, which left them vulnerable to coordinated Coalition attacks. "Admiral, the Dominion flagship is moving to engage our center," a tactical officer reported. "If they break through, we lose the whole fleet." Admiral Toth made a decision. "All human forces, the Dominion flagship is the priority target. Whatever you can do to slow it down, do it." "Understood," Commander Torres responded from his ship. "Nate, you want to try that stupid idea you mentioned earlier?" "Which one?" "I mentioned like 5 stupid ideas. The one with the reactor overload." "Oh, that stupid idea. Yeah, let's do it." Nate Cross was aboard a Coalition transport that had been disabled early in the battle. Most of the crew had evacuated, but Nate stayed behind with 3 other humans and 2 Kryn engineers. They were trying to restart the reactor, not to fly the ship, but to overload it. "If we do this, we die," one of the Kryn engineers said flatly. "Probably," Nate agreed, adjusting power flow controls. "But that Dominion flagship will be severely damaged and the rest of our fleet can capitalize on it. That is not a fair trade. 5 lives for 1 damaged ship. It's not about fair. It's about effective." Nate looked at the engineer. "You can leave. I'll finish this myself." The engineer looked at his companion. They had both fought alongside humans for months now. They had learned something important. When a human said they would do something suicidal, they meant it. And sometimes their sacrifice made the difference. "We will stay," the engineer decided. "Someone must ensure you do the math correctly." "Humans are terrible at mathematics," Nate grinned. "Fair point. Okay, let's blow up our own ship." They worked quickly, rerouting power through systems never meant to handle that much energy. The reactor temperature climbed. Warning alarms screamed. They had maybe 5 minutes before the whole thing went critical. The disabled transport drifted closer to the Dominion flagship, appearing to be just another piece of space debris. Dominion sensors detected the rising energy signature, but too late. The transport exploded with the force of a small nuclear weapon. The electromagnetic pulse knocked out shields across 3 Dominion ships, including the flagship. In those few seconds of vulnerability, Coalition forces struck. Torpedoes slammed into the flagship's bridge. Secondary explosions rippled across its hull. The massive ship began to list, no longer able to maneuver effectively. Aboard the flagship, alarms blared. Broodmother Shen struggled to her feet from where the explosion had thrown her. Around her, crew members lay wounded or dead. Her tactical display was shattered, but through the view screen she could see the battle turning against them. "Retreat," she ordered. "All ships, tactical withdrawal." "Broodmother, we still have superior numbers." "I said retreat." Shen's voice was sharp with fear and anger. "We cannot win against enemies who weaponize their own deaths. We cannot fight soldiers who laugh as they die. We retreat now or they will destroy us." The Dominion fleet began to pull back, but they could not retreat cleanly because human forces kept harassing them, picking off stragglers, creating chaos. What should have been an orderly withdrawal became a rout. Corporal Lena Hayes aboard a coalition gunship picked off Dominion ships as they fled. Each shot was precise, targeted at engines and weapons rather than trying to destroy. Wounded ships could not fight. Dead ships could not surrender. She had learned the difference. "They're running," her pilot observed. "We won." "We survived," Lena corrected. "That's close enough to winning." The battle ended 3 hours after it began. The coalition fleet had lost 18 ships. The Dominion lost over 200 and retreated in disarray. By any military standard, it was a decisive coalition victory. By human standards, it was just another day at work. On the coalition flagship, Admiral Toth collapsed into his command chair, exhausted. His communication officer approached hesitantly. "Admiral, we are receiving a transmission from the Dominion flagship. Broodmother Shen requests immediate ceasefire and negotiations for peace." Toth sat up straight. "Peace? They are offering surrender." "Not surrender. Peace treaty. Full recognition of current borders. Non-aggression pact. She says, and I quote, 'We will not fight species touched by void madness.' The cost is too high." Admiral Toth began to laugh. It started as a chuckle but grew into full exhausted laughter. After 2 years of war, after countless battles and thousands of deaths, they had won. Not through superior firepower or brilliant tactics, but because humans had scared the enemy into submission. Later that day, Admiral Toth called a meeting of senior officers. Captain Rita Owens attended, looking as tired as everyone else. Admiral Toth stood at the head of the table. "Captain Owens, I owe your species an apology. When humans first arrived, I thought you were sending us the wrong soldiers. I thought you had made a mistake. And now?" Rita asked. "Now I understand. You did not send us warriors. You did not send us soldiers bred for combat. You sent us something far more valuable. Volunteers who chose to face death because they believed it was right." Toth's voice softened. "You sent us people who feel fear but act anyway. That is true courage." General Vorn added, "The Dominion will not threaten coalition space again. We have won a war not through strength but through reputation. Humans have become the monsters that monsters fear." Rita shook her head. "We're not monsters. We're just people doing a job. A job that requires running toward danger while others run away," Dr. Sten said. He had been listening from the back of the room. "I have spent 6 months studying your species. I still do not fully understand you. But I no longer need to. I have learned the only important fact. When humans commit to something, they commit completely. That dedication, that refusal to quit even when logic suggests surrender, that is your true weapon." The meeting ended with formal recognition of human contributions to the war effort. Awards were given, speeches were made, but what mattered most happened in the smaller moments after. Roy Briggs found Private Beth Warner sitting alone in an observation deck, looking out at the stars. She had survived her first major battle, though her ship had taken heavy damage. "How are you holding up?" Roy asked. "I was terrified," Beth admitted. "The whole time?" "Every second." "Good. That means you were paying attention. But you never seemed scared." Roy sat beside her. "Beth, I'm going to tell you a secret. I'm always scared. Every single mission, every single battle. Fear never goes away. You just get better at working with it instead of against it. Then why do this? Why volunteer for this job if it means being afraid all the time?" Roy pointed at the stars. "Out there are people we've never met, will never meet. People who just want to live their lives in peace. The Dominion wanted to take that away from them. Someone had to stop it, And yeah, it's scary, but it's also necessary. And maybe that's enough. Beth was quiet for a while. Then she said, Commander Torres told me that Nate died. He overloaded a reactor to damage the Dominion flagship. They said he was smiling in his final transmission. That sounds like Nate. He always said explosions were beautiful. Was he crazy? Maybe a little. But he was also brave, and those two things don't cancel each other out. Roy stood up. The universe needs warriors. It needs disciplined soldiers who follow orders and maintain formations. But sometimes, it also needs people crazy enough to turn their own ship into a bomb because that's what the mission requires. Nate understood that. He made his choice. Back on Earth, Dr. Hannah Wilson submitted her final report on human military psychology to Coalition Command. Her conclusion was simple. Humans are not fearless. We are not naturally violent. We are not bred for warfare. What we are is adaptable. When faced with threats, some humans choose to become the counter-threat. They volunteer not because they don't understand danger, but because they understand it perfectly and choose to face it anyway. This trait, this willingness to sacrifice personal safety for abstract concepts like duty, honor, and protection of others, makes humans uniquely effective in military contexts. Not because we are better warriors, but because we redefine what warriors can be. 3 months later, peace negotiations concluded. The Dominion Swarm agreed to all coalition terms. Brood Mother Shen signed the treaty personally, though she refused to be in the same room as any human soldiers. She had nightmares about them now, she admitted privately, nightmares about warriors who laughed at death. The human volunteers began returning home. Some stayed with the coalition military, training new recruits. Others went back to their previous lives carrying scars and memories. A few could not adjust to civilian life and re-enlisted immediately. Roy Briggs attended Nate Cross's memorial service on Earth. Hundreds of soldiers came, human and alien alike. They told stories about Nate's terrible jokes, his love of explosives, and his absolute refusal to take anything seriously, except his mission. At the end of the service, Roy said, Nate once told me that he volunteered because sitting still felt wrong, because he needed to do something that mattered. I think that's true for all of us who serve. We're not heroes, we're just people who couldn't sit still while others needed help. Later, a young reporter asked Roy about the war. What was it like, fighting alongside aliens against a hostile species? Roy thought carefully before answering. Aliens aren't that different from us. They feel fear. They want to protect their loved ones. They hope for peace. The only real difference is that when they feel fear, their instinct is to be cautious. When we feel fear, some of us run toward it instead. Not because we're brave, just because someone has to. But why you? Why humans? Roy smiled. Because we're crazy enough to volunteer and lucky enough to survive. That's really all it takes. The reporter published the interview and it became famous across coalition space. Humans were no longer seen as unstable or dangerous, though they were definitely still considered crazy. But it was a good kind of crazy. The kind that made impossible missions possible. The kind that turned certain defeat into unlikely victory. Years later, when new species joined the coalition and asked about humans, they were told one thing. Earth's soldiers are not warriors in the traditional sense. They are certified lunatics in armor, but they are our lunatics. And when the universe needs someone to run toward danger while laughing, we call them. Because sometimes madness is exactly what the situation requires.